Welcome to another episode of AA Illustrates. In this AA Illustrates, we're going to talk about why your automation program doesn't have broad adoption and what you can do about it. And specifically, what we're going to be talking about this time is your automation program and how it can grow and scale. So this is part 3 of a 3-part series that we've been doing on how to grow, scale, and sustain your automation program. So we started with the start phase and we talked about the 3 pitfalls keeping your automation program from growing. We went to the accelerate phase and we said, hey, you've already established some of those quick wins, best practices. Now you're moving on to 3 of our growth hacks that can accelerate your automation program. At this point, we're talking to automation programs that have already started to accelerate and are looking to expand and scale from there. And we're focused on why your automation program doesn't have broad adoption and what you can do about it. Like in the other 2 sessions, I'm joined by Mark Goodair. Mark, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Micah. Really looking forward to this session. All of them have been fun, but especially this session. My name is Mark Goodair. I'm Director of Automation and Business Transformation for Automation Anywhere. Basically, one of my primary responsibilities is leading our Center of Excellence within the company. So obviously, we're focused on helping our customers with the automation journey, but we're also, as we say, drinking our own champagne and automating our own processes within Automation Anywhere. So really enjoying that and happy to be with you today.
Very cool. And we are also joined this session by Anna DeBolt. Anna, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Hi guys, my name is Anna DeBolt. I am a robotics analyst extraordinaire at TIAA. And honestly, Mark, if I can have some of that champagne you're shipping, it make my day go faster.
It's on the way.
Okay.
Absolutely. So Anna is here because one way that you can expand and scale your automation program beyond the accelerate phase is to start introducing citizen development. And Anna is a citizen developer. And so we want to talk to her to understand what her background is, how she got started, what were some challenges she faced, and what she's up to today. So Anna, I sincerely appreciate you joining us. And it would be great if you could start with just a little bit of your background on like what you were doing before you got into RPA and how you got into it and what that meant for you.
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a non sequitur in the technology world. I actually have my Bachelor of Fine Arts in drama for design and technology and theater. And so I graduated in December of 2010 into a recession and said, I don't think I want arts to be my primary source of income. So through a rather circuitous career path, I wound up in IT. And that is what helped me make the leap over to where I currently am at TIAA, working in a robotics factory automating processes. And so I am living proof. You can come from anywhere and automate stuff. You don't have to be a developer. I used to joke that the only type of coding I did before this job was color coding. And so I've picked up a lot of developer tips and tricks. You can certainly Google and YouTube help. You can learn the bits of development that Automation Anywhere won't do for you, but you don't have to know it coming in the gate. So certainly did not have formal experience to prepare me for this role in terms of using Automation Anywhere to automate processes. So it's been
amazing,
awesome opportunity that I'm not missing anything because of that.
Amazing. So Anna, how did you get started? So you went through that period. You mentioned recession. Maybe we want to make a bit of a change in terms of what we do. How did you actually get started in terms of RPA development or building bots?
So the position that I'm in right now was actually started knowing it was going to be a robotics factory. They were looking to staff it out. And in my time in IT, I had done a little bit of development with keystroke emulators, testing files, creating batch files to reset testing data for classes, things of that nature. And so one of the softwares that now Atrium, at the time CHS, had been looking into was Automation Anywhere. So I kind of got to see early version 10, poke around in it. And then when I was able to put that on my resume, I was like, hey, I've seen this. I got picked up by this team who's like, oh, she has AA on her resume. And so I really got a foot in the door through that learning experience and was able to kind of say, all right, now we're going to do this for real. While everybody is learning, I'm not at a disadvantage because nobody here knows how to use AA. Everybody's taking the training. And so, of course, there's nothing that I've ever tried to learn that I haven't been able to put my put my head down and focus on, except for maybe rocket science. But I'm not working at NASA, so I think I'm okay there. But yeah, it really was a little bit of experience and some luck.
Hey, and I've just got one quick follow-on question to that, and it's completely fine if the answer is nothing. But anything about your fine arts background that actually translated into building bots? I'm just fascinated. Sometimes there can be interesting connections.
100%. So I know everybody has a different experience with an undergrad. At their most common denominator, right? They teach you how to solve problems, right? You come out with an undergraduate degree and you say, all right, I'm given a problem. I know the basic steps to assess it and tackle it.
Right.
With a fine arts degree, that's kind of on steroids because you're literally given these tasks that are seemingly impossible, right? So in a show, for example, the Nutcracker, you're starting with an average size Christmas tree on stage. And it all through make believe has to suddenly grow 50 feet on stage with everybody watching. You can't like stop and assemble something. It has to just. So yeah, sometimes what I have learned from my degree is I look at things in a very different way. And all right, this might not be the most logical way to get here, but it does get us there. There's a little bit of showmanship in bot building too sometimes where you're like, this might not be the most direct way, but it's pretty slick. It's always going to work.
Very cool.
That's the most important part. It always got to work is the thing. So, Anna, when you were getting started, what were some of the first challenges that you faced when you were building bots? And I know, I want to shout out, you started on version 10, which was not exactly the most like user-friendly citizen developer kind of experience.
Yeah, so version 10 in and of itself, it was honestly good to me because it was intuitive enough. And honestly, I would say it was a little bit more developer friendly. So when I was reaching out and looking at how to do things and I would come across forums with developers trying to explain stuff, there was a little bit more that I could just replicate automatically. So honestly, even though version 10 was, 3 versions ago, still had some nice features like that. I will say the hardest part for me was being able to take full advantage of the software. There were a lot of things that I just kind of found by trial and error. So for example, in version 10, you could open a browser, but what I found through some Googling and some search on A people and talking to some developers is I can launch a Chrome browser and I can suppress pop-ups in case it didn't close all the windows and has that restore tabs feature. And I can go ahead and put in the URL I want to go to, right? All in one step. So learning some things like that to fully utilize the product, I think is a lot of where I spent my time in the early days. Again, not a developer, didn't know what a DOM XPath was, I think, Micah, until you told me. And then I'm like, oh wait, this is magic. I can find DOM XPaths for things and I can look at them in Notepad and predict what they're going to be. And I can use this to figure out where something I need to clone is. And I can say, go here, use this. Never heard of it in my life. But once somebody explains it to you, you don't have to be a master at it. You just have to have, I want to say exposure. Once you have that exposure, you're like, oh, that makes total sense. In this use case, that's the best way to do this. So kind of catching up on something that I think developers would take for granted. But for me, it was just, okay, drinking from the fire hose, new software, new way of thinking. Well, not new way of thinking, but new way of processing the things I think.
That's excellent.
I love that. That's one thing that we've been emphasizing in these prior couple of sessions, Anna, is just the learning that happens. And the learning that happens is not something that's unique to citizen developers. I've got a team of people, they're in the center of excellence. This is their full-time job. That's, this is all they do in terms of their current work, but the product's constantly evolving. There's always new use cases we're unlocking. So the learning ends up being a constant no matter what we're doing. And that's certainly true for me, for my role as well. So interested in that piece. So as a citizen developer, you've obviously got a relationship with this center of excellence. I know different organizations call that a different thing. Some organizations call it something different, but that kind of centralized governing body. What kind of role or what kind of responsibility do they play in your work, kind of enabling you as a citizen developer and then supporting you ongoing?
So our Center of Excellence, our core platform team, they have a really important job, and that is to have some consistency across all the different factories going on at TIAA. So one of their jobs is to house the platform that we all roll up to have some kind of governance to make sure we're not just rogue automating with production data, right? They really are there to keep the wheels on the bus, to keep our reputation good and make sure that nobody's kind of going off in left field. And so, from our perspective, they have done a good bit of work in terms of standing up the control room, standing up the different environments, making sure that all of the different teams have the roles assigned, the setups they need, managing credential vaults and things like that, which plug for A360 has gotten easier with every version. But yes, our Center of Excellence, it really does it's the umbrella, right, that protects us from everything above it. So all we can say is, oh, you want us to have this bot shell that checks to see if we're registered before we run, and that's all we have to do? Great, happy to do
Right.
it.
I feel like bringing you into some other meetings. There are still folks that ask that question. Do I need a center of excellence? Why do I need one? You just gave a wonderful description of it. So thank you.
And this has all been excellent. I want to understand a bit more about tips you would give for other business users who are the Anna of 5 years ago, right? Because you were at a certain point where you're kind of like, I have this degree in this one field and it doesn't really align with this thing I want to do, but I think I can do it, right? And so what tips would you give to someone else who's let's say they're a business analyst or they're in finance and they want to build bots, but how did they make that transition?
Yeah, so honestly, I would say 90% of it is persistence. Learn as much as you can. Whether you think it's relevant or not, it's going to come back. It's going to be useful. So, not exactly my career path, but we have teammates who have come to us from the business who now can go forth and automate because they know the process like the back of their mind, like the back of their hand, and they just need to learn the software, right? I was a little bit backwards. I learned the software and then I went into the business to learn the business to help them automate. But honestly, as long as you keep an open mind and you understand that you're never going to know it all, no matter how good you are, right? That's okay. You're never going to know it all. And you really shouldn't try to. It's okay to look stuff up and not have everything memorized. If you've got that growth mindset, you're priming yourself for success.
Fantastic. And one other thing that's kind of interesting to me is sometimes folks say it's difficult to be a citizen developer because I've got a day job. I don't know how that relates to specifically what you do or within your organization, but is that a tension you see where people are doing bot building, but they've also got other responsibilities? And how are you seeing people deal with that challenge as a citizen developer?
So this is a place where I think TIAA has really done this right. Building is my day job. I don't have a different day job. I don't build 100%. Like I said, I do sit with the business. I understand what they're doing so I can replicate it. But at the end of the day, I am successful if I am producing bots that bring lift to business. And I don't have a master other than the business, right? So I'm not doing production work and bot building. And so this is where, like, kudos to TIAA and the culture and the environment and the way they're rolling out their bot factories, because if I had two masters, I don't know that I could do it, right?
Absolutely. Anna, one other question, just real quickly. What did you find to be the learning curve in getting up to speed to be able to do RPA? Again, coming from a non-technical background, you mentioned you started with version 10 and then went through 11 and 360. But what would you say to someone that's just kind of intimidated about the learning curve?
So I feel like when I started, we jumped right in, right? We were doing discovery, we were doing design on processes, we were doing sit-wits, we took the training. And so it was nice to have the training at the same time that I'm doing all this discovery work for automation projects so that I can kind of say, oh yeah, this is when I might use this. I have use cases like in my mind as we're going through training. Honestly, by 3 or 4 months into the position, I was like, let's make some bots. Let's do this. The tool really, again, we joke that 10 wasn't very intuitive, but it was easy to learn and get going with. And each subsequent version has made it much more user-friendly. So if I can do it on 10, trust me, you can do it on 360.
It's wonderful to hear, and we're putting a lot of time. We've got some exciting new functionality coming in to make that developer experience even better, even easier. So, but that's great feedback. Thanks so much, Anna.
Anna, lastly, I want to ask you a couple fun questions. What bots have you built for your personal life outside of work? Have you built anything that you've used at home or for friends?
I actually have not. The closest thing I have done is during the Bot Games Season 2, my husband is actually teaching STEM classes. He's teaching Project Lead the Way. He's got design and automation, robotics and automation and design and modeling. And so I was like, Kent, you have to download the community version and do these with me. Like, it's a competition. I will beat you. Let's go. So we're not competitive at all.
Yeah, obviously not.
I think that's the closest I've brought automation anywhere home with me. But that doesn't mean I won't in the future. I have been eyeing an electric vehicle with gas prices and gas shortages. And I had a great mentor who made a ridiculous bot to scour the United States for a used Toyota Prius. So there's definitely some inspiration there and use cases to bring it back home.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously, shout out to you for participating in Bot Game Season 2. We make those challenges so that people can get hands-on and see what these things are like. And it's a great excuse and opportunity to try things out. Like, you don't have to know everything about a work process. You come and do this challenge and you use the tool and see how you can solve it. So that's awesome to hear. Last question. I know you're using Automation 360 now. Do you build in list view or flow view?
I typically build in list view. And the reason I do that is I have a horrible habit of building the way I think. And shout out to Aaron Gleason and John Stuvey for the training that I've taken, because they are really challenging me to think like a bot and not like a person. And so sometimes when I look at it in list view, it makes me, because it's wide. It's if, error handling. And it gives me a little bit of anxiety. So flow view. So if I look in flow view, it gets to be a little much. So I stick to list view. But yes, part of that is just me. And I realized today as I was making like a process flow, I do it just to get it down. And then I go back and I'm like, all right, let me make this make sense. Let me make this more efficient. Let me, get rid of however many lines of code I can as I go. But I will fully admit, I think I'm still a list girl because
Mark, we haven't talked about this. Are you a list guy or a flow guy?
Yes.
Both?
So no, I absolutely go back and forth. There are moments where it's all about lists, and then I really, really enjoy the flow view sometimes. So I flip back and forth. How about you?
Flow view 99% of the time. Always flow view. I don't know why. It just visually, like, I connect with it better. I feel like I'm a part of it. List view, yeah, I don't know.
Both of them, though, the fact that we can like collapse our ifs, collapse our steps are amazing. Not just on your Apple Watch, in A360, they're amazing.
Absolutely. Totally agree. The steps is a great way to kind of force yourself to do a little bit of commenting. Yes. And I think it's a great way to organize your logic. Hey, the last thing I want to talk about, some of the resources that you leveraged as you were getting up to speed, as you were having issues. I need to understand how this DOM XPath stuff works, or how this particular, for you, it was a command or an action, but how did that thing work? What resources were you using? There's Automation Anywhere University, Community Edition, obviously, A-People. What if that was helpful? What were you using?
Yeah, so I will fully admit my first go-to is usually somebody on the team and say, hey, can I get a second set of eyes? Like, am I having a Mugatu, I'm taking crazy pills moment here, where am I just doing something wrong? Because again, if you can break it, I will find a way, I will do it. After that, if everything looks like it should work and it still doesn't, A-People is a great place to go, especially if I'm getting an error message, because I can just copy that error message and throw it in there. And usually I see a ton of people, not a ton of people like a bad thing, but I see lots of articles of people who've had this and potential ways to solve it. If that doesn't help me, sometimes like if it's a SQL issue or connecting to a database or something that might not be an Automation Anywhere issue, but might just be I've got the wrong syntax, hop on Google, some kind of flow stack forum. Just honestly, I poke around anywhere I can. Occasionally we do pull-ups with other factories where it's like, hey, have you seen this? Do you know how to work on this? Like I said at the beginning, I got some code from another factory, and they had the launch Chrome to a specific browser, suppressing pop-ups, all that stuff in one command. And I was like, I am totally pirating this every time from now until the end of time. So sometimes reaching out to other factories for samples of code and things like that are honestly more productive than you might think. Like, yeah, they're doing something different, but there's always nuggets in there that you can use.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's a really important thing as organizations look to scale their automation program with citizen development, right? There's lots of new people who will be learning this all at the same time. How do we build community for those people so they have a place to go and ask questions and get help, just like Anna mentioned? If you have someone who you can go partner with and say, hey, can you take a look at this? Maybe they have more experience, maybe they're learning with you, but that second set of eyes is super helpful. It's also super helpful to have resources throughout the organization who can help to share some of that reusable code. And we talked about that as a focus in phase 2, where we were saying like, hey, this is a great time to focus on reusability, focus on how you're going to publish it, and make sure that that code and that logic and those solutions are available to people throughout the organization. And like Anna mentioned, that was an excellent point to what TIAA has done to be able to have people kind of share code across factories, share solutions, and things like that. So excellent to hear that.
So can I throw in one thing on that topic?
Absolutely. Go for it.
I think as we go through school and we go through training, right, we kind of learn that I thought of this, it's mine, I want to hoard it, right? I don't want to share it because nobody else had to work for this. And honestly, working with Automation Anywhere has kind of opened my eyes, like that's absolutely the wrong mentality. There is nothing to be lost if I share my code with somebody else and they look at it and they improve upon it and they share it back with me. And so just something to keep in the back of your mind. I think, again, society has trained us that if we develop something, if we come up with something, hold on to it tightly. And it's the exact opposite. You got to let that go into the world and it will come back better.
Great point.
It's one other question, Anna. We're interested a little bit in terms of more broadly how you view this whole kind of space of automation and digital workforce. Our company has a pretty big vision in this area. We think that there's a lot more work than human beings to do it. We've seen some recent examples, even in the news, where that kind of thing has happened. Just interested in your view of that. Some of us were talking about this the other day. It wasn't so long ago that you'd hardly ever find someone that had a cell phone. Now you see them all over the place. It's been the same thing with technologies like the internet. How do you see automation? Do you see it being similar to that or different in terms of its kind of broad application?
No, I think it's very similar in the sense that the more we socialize it, the more accessible we make it, the closer you get the ability to automate processes to the end user doing it, the more productive they are going to be. Yes, there's a learning curve. Yes, I agree that TIAA setting up factories to do it versus having every individual user do it is probably the compromise that makes sense. But at the end of the day, as an analyst doing work, do I want to struggle through all the stuff that a computer could do or a trained monkey could do, or do I want to focus on the stuff that makes me use my brain and gets me creative and problem solving that actually fulfills me as a person? And I think most people will answer, I don't want to do the busy work. And so the closer we can get automation to the people doing the tasks, I think the better.
Absolutely agree. Hey, well, thank you so much for joining, Anna. This has been a great conversation. Anna, I have to know, we've talked about a lot of the bots that you guys are creating. Are you guys naming your bots? Is there a branding effort that goes on with these guys?
Of course. I name everything.
Throw out some good bot names here.
Named Lupe.
Is the Micah
bot names?
Is the Micah bot still functional? I just want to know, is the Micah bot still operational? That's a no.
We don't have a Micah bot. Yeah, no, we name all our bots. It's actually kind of a team building exercise. Sometimes it's within our team, and sometimes it's within the team where the automation is going to serve. And so we'll do contests where people from the business can submit names and vote on which one is their favorite. One of my colleagues right now is creating an Automation Anywhere bot for death certificate IGO processing, and we're trying to figure out what its name is going to be. So we lovingly call it the death bot right now. That sounds really morbid. It's gone through several kind of roadblocks where we think it's going to die and not make it to production. And so now we're calling it the zombie bot because it lives, it died, it lives. So yes, we use that as just a fun way to tie the automation opportunities back to the business, as team building within ourselves. Once you name it, people associate with it. And so I'm all about naming bots.
Grim Reaper would be a good name for that one because it does have letters R, P, and A. So just throwing that out there.
That's absolutely true. No, I can see all sorts of jokes about the day it goes end of life and everything. I can see all sorts of jokes around that one. Yeah.
Anna, what kind of feedback are you getting from your customers, right? The business users that you're delivering these automations for? Are people excited about them? You know, what happens when you deliver a bot to a group that maybe feels overwhelmed by the amount of work that they have?
Yeah, so we were actually talking about this as a team this week. Our factory is about 4 years old, and we are just now starting to get to the point where people are like, oh yeah, automation is making my life easy. So it's not that they were never appreciative. It's they're starting to see the combined lift as bot after bot after bot. They're realizing if we had to do all this manually, we'd be working 80-hour weeks, right? We would not have the work-life balance that we have. And honestly, the way that companies are growing, you're always going to have more work, but you're not always going to have more people to do it. And so they're starting to realize that the bots are coming in and taking over that extra volume, or automating processes that give them back the time to do it if it's something that needs to be done by processors.
Wonderful. And Anna, you guys, I'm guessing you have a pretty neat way of sharing those wins. So when you deliver an awesome bot, you guys have a neat mechanism of celebrating and making sure everyone knows about it?
We do. We send out every release, we send out automation notes. So we've got 3 factories in my immediate team that roll up together. And so we share those wins when we meet with the business. Sometimes we'll go to their weekly huddles and say, hey, the spot is now live in production. Here's how it works. We're going to teach you how to use it if it's something they interact with versus something that's just a batch run that does stuff for them in a void. And honestly, I remember one time we made a bot and I made a birth announcement for it and sent it out to the team. So instead of saying it's a boy, it said it's a bot.
That's very clever evangelism. And again, another point we talked about was like the evangelism that you can do internally within your organization to help people get excited and learn about what the program's doing. That's a super clever way. And obviously the creativity from your fine arts degree is paying dividends there because you're coming up with all these really creative ways to evangelize the efforts that your team is doing. Anna, Mark, thank you so much for your time. This was an awesome conversation. Anna, I sincerely appreciate your honest and candid answers. This was great to hear from you. And it's, I think, a really inspirational story for other people who are interested in, building out their own automations, but maybe you're intimidated and feel like this isn't something they can do. I think you've done a great job of explaining kind of your background, as well as the accessibility that this is for everyone else who's interested in learning to build their own automations. This has been AA Illustrates. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Be sure to like and subscribe for more Automation Anywhere and Automation Program Scale content. I'm Micah Smith. Go be great.